Hello fellow mood readers. Today I have a special video. So this will be my first actual review that's not in a wrap up where I just talk a tiny bit about it, but I'm actually going to do my best today to not give you spoilers for these two books. But I did read 2 arcs from NetGalley. I got so excited when I saw that I got approved for these 2. It was my first time actually using NetGalley. I didn't have any problems with the app, but I did one on audio format and then I had one e-arc. I really wish that I had gotten it and they had already done the Kobo support. I might have actually flew through it faster. So some of it might have been, I really don't like reading on my phone, so sometimes I took little breaks when otherwise I probably would have just kept going. But these 2 books, one of them is out currently, and I actually finished the audiobook. I got approved for that pretty close to release day, and so I had my review up just before release day or on release day. The other one that I had the e-arc for, which I just recently finished, that one is out in July. So without further ado, let's get talking about some books. So my first book that I'm going to talk about is going to be the audiobook, and that was approved by Macmillan Audio, and that was for Overgrowth by Mira Grant. I had this one already pre-ordered from Barnes & Noble by the time I actually got approved for the art. I thought that the audio narrator did a wonderful job. I'll flash her name up here. I thought she did a wonderful job bringing Stacia to life, and the audio experience on the NetGalley app was actually pretty good. It felt like a lot of the other apps that I use to listen to audiobooks. So it was pretty much right at home for that. But I will give you the synopsis and then we can get into my pros and cons and talk about this book, because I am familiar with Mira Grant. I did read Into the Drowning Deep, which is right here, actually. And I did enjoy this one a lot. This one got a higher rating, and I feel like this is actually not talked about enough. I liked this one a lot, which was why I actually, when I saw Overgrowth on there, I wanted to immediately go for that one, because Mira Grant's writing is great, and I really loved the characters in here. That's what drew me to this one, with the hopes of the same. So I'm going to start out with the synopsis for you. I'm not going to go into spoilers, so there's some things that I would like to talk about a little bit, but I don't want to get into anything spoilery. I'm just going to give a general overall mention to some of the things, because I feel like, for me, generally, the synopsis is either already forgotten by the time I get to the book, or I don't really crack it open and read it before I go in. It's usually kind of just, I kind of feel like this today, and I kind of remember what it's about. So it's like a general kind of thing, and I don't know how other readers are, so I definitely don't want to give too much away, but I do want to talk about, like I said, the pros and cons, the things that I liked, and the things that didn't work for me for this one. So this is just a story. It can't hurt you anymore. Since she was 3 years old, Anastasia Miller has been telling anyone who would listen that she's an alien disguised as a human being, and that the armada that left her on Earth is coming for her. Since she was 3 years old, no one has been willing to listen. Now, with an alien signal from the stars being broadcast around the world, humanity is finally starting to realize that we've already been warned, and it may be too late. The invasion is coming, Stacey's biological family is on the way to bring her home, and very few family reunions are willing to cross the gulf of space for just one misplaced child. What happens when you know what's coming and just refuse to listen? While this one is generally horror, I didn't feel scared by it. So it's one of those horror books, I think, that the things that happen to the characters or the things that others do are, and the type of horror that kind of makes you think, and it's a little bit less scary. There is, I think, some body horror, which didn't bother me, but others might see it that way. If you have any triggers, maybe check trigger warnings for this, because there are some things I think that maybe might bother some people. But as the synopsis said, Stacia is like, I'm an alien. It's the kind of thing that, you know, you wouldn't think is real. The child may be pulling your leg, you know? So generally it becomes that kind of story where she is kind of by herself. She only has a few friends that kind of are just fine with the things that she says, but they're there for her either way. And I think a lot of the character work in here was done pretty well. I have some favorites in here, some good moments that made me laugh because certain characters are kind of out there. But I also had, you know, on the flip side, as you do, there's always characters that make you angry or you don't particularly like, and this has all of those. I will say Graham is my favorite character from this. There were only a few things as far as cons for me. Those would be the pacing, because this lagged in the middle, and I felt like some of the parts could have probably been taken out because you're in Stacia's perspective, and one of my other cons happened to be that she did kind of think a lot of the same things a lot. And while I might do that too, sometimes I just keep going with things, or when I fixate on anything, I might think the same things like that. But it was done quite a bit in this, and some of the thoughts just kept repeating. There were instances close enough that I thought, I was like, did I listen to this part already? And, you know, that kind of thing. I did take my time with the audio. I didn't like fly right through it. I kind of gave myself time to take in the story and let it take me where it would, because I had no guesses. Honestly, this was going where it was going, and I didn't honestly know where that would be. There are things in this book that fall very close to real life situations, especially now in the political climate. I don't want to specifically call out any one thing because there were a bunch of them, but just be aware, just go in knowing that. I thought it did bring up a lot of issues and a lot of things, and it called to question some things. And I do believe Mira Grant also did that maybe into The Drowning Deep too. I don't remember as much. With this one, I think honestly one of my favorite parts was I did like the beginning, as you're meeting Stacia, as you're finding out how she's living her life. It does give you a lot of recent times Stacia, so later on in her life, with some flashbacks from childhood, from specific parts, and with her remembering things, finding out more about the people that surround her and are her friends, or who she considers her friends. Later on, you do get that sense when things start really going down of who is sticking with her and who is not, kind of. I will have to say, I also did like the ending. It really did go out there. And I was like, oh, so we're going this way, you know? That was one of the things that I did particularly enjoy, was kind of figuring out how things were working and kind of getting a general idea of what was happening towards the end. You got to know decent enough about these characters, and even the ones you met later, you kind of got a feel for them in the situations. Let's just appreciate this cover too for 1 second, because it's beautiful. But getting into my overall thoughts, I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. I rounded up to 4 for Goodreads. It's gonna be hard to say who exactly this is for. I would say definitely read the synopsis, check trigger warnings. If you liked Mira Grant's other work, maybe you might like this, but kind of go in if you think you might like it. It's definitely different. Keep an eye out for the pacing issues, the repetition. I guess just sit back and enjoy the ride if you go for it. At some parts, it feels a little absurd, so it kind of feels like it has its sense of humor, especially with some of the circumstances, and there's some banter back and forth, so it's got its senses of humor, but it's also got its serious moments. If you kind of like that kind of book, or anything that I said that it has in it, then I would say definitely go check it out and give it a try. I think I'm going to probably one of these days maybe read the physical copy and see if knowing how it ends might give me a different perspective, or, you know. So those are my thoughts on this, and overall I would say that if you think you might like it, check it out. So my next book ended up being the e-arc that I got, and I tried after my friend did, my buddy reading bestie, Allie tried, and she got approved for it, and she had already started reading it, and I was like, maybe I should try too, because we had wanted to read it together. We were originally going to read and annotate the Jasad Heir together. This came up, you know, she got approved the e-arc, and I decided to try myself. I got approved for it, so thank you, Orbit. Thank you, NetGalley. I'm excited about Kobo support, so if I decide to ever check out any more again, maybe I will do it when Kobo is supported and I'll be able to read on the Kobo, because reading on my phone isn't something I particularly enjoy, but I did it for this. I did it for this because I absolutely loved this book. The Jasad Crown was actually one of my most anticipated reads of this year, along with a few others, and it did not disappoint. This book, I can't talk about the second book without talking about the first book. So I know I've spoken about this in the past. I don't know if you've watched my other videos and heard me ranting and raving about how much I loved the Jasad Heir by Sarah Hashem, but please allow me to do so again. I really love the Jasad Heir by Sarah Hashem, and now I can say that I absolutely loved the Scorched Throne duology. So I will give you the synopsis for the first book because I don't want to give away any spoilers for anybody that hasn't picked this one up. I will tell you about what worked for me, because honestly, there wasn't a single thing that did not work for me in this book. The only thing I wanted, selfishly, was more. I'm like, I kind of wish this was a trilogy because I wish I had more, but it was honestly just a wonderful duology, and I honestly can't think of anything that I would change. So let's get into this, and then I'll tell you about the second book. 10 years ago, the kingdom of Jasad burned. Its magic was outlawed, its royal family murdered, down to the last child. At least that's what Sylvia wants people to believe. The lost heir of Jasad, Sylvia never wants to be found. She can't think about how Nizal's armies destroyed her kingdom and continue to hunt its people. Not if she wants to stay alive. But when Aaron, the Nizal heir, treks a group of Jasadi rebels to her village, staying one step ahead of death gets trickier. In a moment of anger, Sylvia reveals her magic and captures Aaron's attention. Now, to save her life, she'll have to make a deal with her greatest enemy. If she helps him lure the rebels, Sylvia will escape persecution. A deadly game begins. Sylvia can't let Aaron discover her identity, even as hatred shifts into something more. But her secret isn't as hidden as she thinks. Soon, Sylvia will have to choose between the life she wants and the one she left behind. The Scorched Kingdom is rising, and it needs a queen. Going into the Jasad Heir, I would say I absolutely loved the characters so much. Sarah Hashem does a great job. And I love that it's Egyptian inspired. I love that. I love just about everything there is about these books. The world's very well crafted. I believe Crown is also a little bit chunky. I think it might be a little bit bigger than this one. Aside from that, the world is beautiful. I love the magic. There's just something about the way that Sarah Hashem writes. I absolutely love it. I flew through this, the Jasad Heir, and Allie had read it first. I was texting her about it, and we did the same thing with the Jasad Crown. She had started, but she was taking her time and kind of soaking it in and enjoying it. But that book, speaking of the Jasad Crown, goes from like page 1, it hits you and it just doesn't stop. The pacing is wonderful. I mean, there isn't a single moment that I can think of that you could take out because it's just nonstop. It doesn't linger, it doesn't lag. There's no time for that. Honestly, so much is going on. Each time a chapter ended, I needed to keep going. I did read this in kind of little binges, because like I said, reading on my phone wasn't particularly ideal for me. When I was reading it, I was reading chapters at a time, and they weren't particularly long chapters either. Seeing all of the returning characters, because I had initially been wanting to reread the Jasad Heir before going into it, I did give myself the brief recap. I went back and I kind of paged through the last bit of the Jasad Heir, so I did have that context going directly in, because it does not give you a moment, you are right in it. And just seeing those returning characters coming back, remembering my feelings of reading this book and going into this one, it was great. Like I said, I wish there were more, because I just didn't want it to end. And sometimes I think that's why I wasn't particularly picking it up all of the time either, because I didn't want it to end, but I also wanted to know, both of us, because she did it as well, she finished first. When I kind of binge read the last bit as well, and we both did it with tears in our eyes, because things were happening, just knowing that it was coming to an end as well, and just the things that were going on, it was crazy. Sarah Hashem just did an absolutely stellar job with this duology, and my most anticipated read actually became my favorite of the year so far. So it's right up there with my love of John Gwynne. Speaking of tears, Ruin left me in tears, and then Jasad Crown left me in tears. And I was thinking as well of another duology, The Two Twisted Crowns is the second book in the Shepherd King duology. And when I was reading the end of that one, it was the same thing. I was reading through my tears. and when that happens, sometimes I just felt that deep connection with some of the characters. You feel that with the writing. It's just really hard to talk about, because I can't give anything away. I don't want to give away any spoilers. I don't want to say anything, because it is the second book. But the conclusion that this book is left with, I really enjoyed it. Sarah Hashem just knocked this duology out of the park. I want to recommend it to any reader that I feel would love this duology. If you love fantasy, if you love character work, because honestly, I can't say enough about this. And I will be annotating, and maybe one of these days I will do a spoiler review of some of my favorite series. If you like that, let me know, because I wish I could talk about some things, and I know that I can't because this book is not out yet. I would love to do a full spoiler kind of review on these. If you think that you might enjoy that, if you have read this, let me know, because it's honestly one of my favorite duologies right now, along with the Shepherd King duology. And it's just honestly, it's right up there with my love of John Gwynne right now, because I just absolutely gave this 5-star, and I would give it more if I could, because I can't even think of another book or of any other books this year other than John Gwynne that made me read that way, through tears, binge reading the last little bit, because you need to know how it ends and you need to know what happens. And honestly, I think if you follow my social media, you probably saw the reviews for both of these that I typed out. And I did post it on Instagram, and I did also post one on Goodreads, although I know I never really shared my Goodreads. I feel like Goodreads is mostly just for me to see how I'm doing goal-wise, or for me to remember what I was reading when, because I'm terrible at writing things down. I did post reviews for both of these on my Instagram, so you could check that out as well. I know in my review of the Jasad Crown, this is going to be mostly for the people that, if you know, you know. So I did put that it threatened me like a deranged goose to read the rest of the book. And it's just one of those things. I absolutely love these characters. And even characters that are new to the Jasad Crown, I really loved those characters as well. I think that if you love fantasy, and if this synopsis sounded good to you, then definitely pick this up, because it's just beautiful. The writing's gorgeous. I don't know what more I could say, because I'm terrified of giving spoilers or letting something slip and ruining somebody's reading experience. I never want that to happen. And so sometimes that makes it hard for me to talk about. That's why a lot of times I don't generally give too much of my thoughts, and why this kind of was a little bit hard for me to try to figure out a way to word around things. And I hope I did an okay job. I'm sorry if I rambled too much or repeated myself as far as repetition goes, you know, for Overgrowth. So thank you all so much for watching this. I hope I gave you enough information to go in, but I hope I didn't ruin any reading experiences giving anything away or saying too much. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you for sticking around. If you're still here, leave a phone emoji or a headphone emoji. Leave one of the two of those if you made it this far. Let me know if you've used NetGalley before, or if you have read Overgrowth. I'd like to know your thoughts also as well if you have. Thank you all again, like I said, so much for watching. Sorry if I'm rambling again. I get excited when I get to talk about books. And actually this is like the second time doing this video, because I thought the first time that I didn't do a good enough job. So for those of you that stuck around, there you go, there's a little tidbit. I actually recorded this twice because I didn't think the first time I did a very good job explaining how I was feeling. I needed to do a better job, I felt like. Until the next one, bye.